level.
Really present. And by the way,
so present.
How funny. I love hearing hot girl stories. Oh yeah, I meet A-listers all the time. Yeah. You think they're coming up to me in Earth Cafe? You think they want to talk to me? No.
But maybe, well, hot women, right?
No. I mean, that's not,
well, you're also
it's not
married.
a two-way street.
You're married. So it's sort of like you're off the market. You know, it's like maybe.
It's still nice to get hit on once in a while, you know?
Just to know that you still got it.
Stand-up shows. Yeah. It's just throw me ladies, slide. You know, I'm not going to abuse you just, you know, it's a cat call. Just a quick, friendly, across the street cat call. Keep it safe.
Do you believe in love at first sight, or should I walk by again?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
You know, women have the worst pickup lines. Because you're used to Michael Keaton just rolling by. You don't have to go out there and say something stupid. But us men, have we missed on some shots in our lives?
Okay, when you were single, how would you roll up to women? How would you rock up to women, as the kids say these days?
Well, you learn what not to do, right? Like you can't approach from behind because it's all like sales. You can't just like surprise somebody. But at the same time, what I've learned is women always make the first move, even if they don't know it. It's usually eye contact.
Eye contact,
but
yeah.
And if you don't respond to the first move, it's like, you know, it's over, you know, you've lost. So my big thing, a lot of times I would like take space up at the bar. I would just be in the way. That way, if a lady needed to go buy a drink or something and she might have been into me, she would at least come into the arena that I was in. And at least that would give me some gumption to possibly say something stupid, or you know what I mean?
And what would be the stupid thing that you would say?
Very quick, in the moment.
Something witty. You're very witty. You're a comedian. You're on your feet.
That's what it is. It's crowd work. You're like, what, you know, you'll make fun of a sweater. It's just, but you know, and then you have this.
You'll make fun of a sweater. So you were negging? You were doing the pickup artist? You were ugly sweater weather. Ugh.
No, because negging, they were like psychologically trying to bring women down. Mine was like, you knew it was play. I remember this one time I was at a bar and there was two women that were about 5 feet apart from each other, both in their own groups. And they both women had a cheetah print dress on. You had to be there. And I like tapped both women and I said, who wore it best? And I went through like an Us Weekly style thing. And this one, her whole group looked at me like they were about, and then somebody laughed and it kind of settled them down.
Yeah.
It worked. But it was just like
and she happens to be your wife?
No, none of those moves. No, my wife would not be, no moves. She's a quality time person. I had to really earn her, she wasn't going to be fooled by some flimsy affirmation. No. She's very expensive.
How did you guys meet? And did you have any suave moves?
No, I made eye contact with her on a bus on 30th and 3rd Street in New York City.
Shut the front door. That is so cute.
Well, so here's the deal. It was to to do background work on a show called Mildred Pierce on HBO. So this is a long time ago. And they put you on a bus and they ship you out to the location. And so it was like a private bus, but apparently she remembered me because of how loud I was. It was like 5 a.m. And it just perfectly describes our relationship where she's like quiet, introverted. And I'm just like, who wore it best, And later on that day, we ended up eating lunch together and kind of exchanged info. And then when I moved to California, she knew I moved. She had lived there and we became friends. For a few years, casual friends. We had other relationships, but I always found her beautiful and I always really enjoyed our conversations. And then one day I saw her back in New York City and she hugged me. And I've told her this years later. I was like, I could tell from that hug that she was single. Like she gave me a single girl hug.
She leaned in with her boobs.
There was a lot of body contact in that. Yeah. A big ling. And, just a few months after that, I got a gig in LA and it moved to LA and we were dating within several months of that. So when the time was right, everything fell into place. And it's very good that I didn't blow that earlier on because, a lot of times in relationships, you kind of do a lot of work and then meet somebody when you're like on a better level. Well, we were both, I was not on a good level when we started dating. She's seen me go from unemployed, broke. She's seen me go minimum wage jobs to finally us like buying a home and starting a family together. So it's been very great that she's been there for that ride and wasn't like into me for any other reason than we were just compatible.
Yeah. And you obviously made her laugh and you were loud and you were like, who are best?
I mean, I made her laugh, and now she'll like refuse to laugh as happens. You know what I mean? Once they understand the thing you do, that's like your charming thing. That's like, all right, fool me with something else, Playboy.
Yeah, but I feel like, I don't know. I mean, they say this a lot about like men. If, a funny guy can get any girl, basically, like is sort of like comedians can get, it's you make a woman laugh and it's sort of like a superpower. No, you don't think so?
Well, it's a high predictor of, I'm not talking about myself, but it's a predictor of intelligence and ability to like navigate social situations. I think another indicator is like height, like women like a taller guy. And I don't think it's superficial so much as like CEOs are taller and taller men make more money. It's like one of those things. It's like rotten, but it's like a quick, it might not be what you're worth now, but it's your potential for future income. And that is potential for protecting and survival.
Yeah, I think that just the reason why women love tall men is just it's a primal, you're going to protect me from the lions. You're going to protect me from other dangerous men or, other like dangerous people who are going to come into the cave or animals or. So I think that's just, I mean, unless it's kind of like Wolverine, unless it's like.
Well, what makes it so tough is for like online dating. Like, I don't know if my wife, I'm 5'10" and a half on a good day after a good hot yoga. You know what I mean? I don't know if she would have even been into me if I was just relegated to above or below 6 foot. Cause who doesn't want a 6'2" guy? I wish I was 6'2". It would have helped me out a lot in sports. Everyone wants, like, height's a huge advantage for a lot of reasons. So like when you whittle things down to like the binary, like, do you fit into this box or not on online, on dating? It's terrible. It's like, that is not your, and then, so what if you do have a yacht and then that's going to be your photo on your online dating. And then people are into you because you have that money. Like you got to meet out in the flesh. I'm such like a boomer when I talk about this, but like, if you're a guy who maybe you're 5'9", but maybe you just nail it with your pitch, then maybe someone would be into you that wouldn't give you a chance on social media.
Honestly, I think witty via text and making someone laugh can go like, honestly, I dated a guy who was like shorter than me and I'm 5'7", and just because he made me laugh and he was brilliant and I was like, yeah, I can fuck with this. Just because I think like, you do
look like the type that would date one of the Oppenheim bros on Selling Sunset.
Who is this?
The guys from Selling Sunset. What are their name? The Oppenheims? Is that their name?
Really? I there's no way.
You don't know them?
I would never look. Okay, look, I'll never say never because then I find myself in that predicament. But reality, guys, I'm sorry, I can't, I won't. It just gives The Bachelor, and it's a very specific type of person who goes on shows like The Bachelor. I mean, I auditioned for the show called Unreal, and you see behind the scenes about. And I almost booked it, and I just thought it was so genius because I've had friends who have worked on those shows, and it is just, she wanted to just end it all. Like, it's literally, just because you're trying to give the worst of humanity, you're trying to make it sensationalized, or you're trying to, like, it's a weird narrative, even though it's real life, but then they cut it a certain way because they need a villain, they need a hero, they need a... I don't know. And so they just, they do all these manipulative things. So people, I feel like the people who enter on those shows, it's you're participating and you're a part of that whole manipulation of something that's not real. And it's, it's like occasionally it's like if I've watched everything on Netflix, I'll find myself be like Selling Sunset. I'll watch, because I'm just like, just having somebody doing something really interesting, like selling, like how do they sell these big properties, and but then after, when there's all this drama and the this and the that and they hate each other and I'm just like, I don't like it. This feels like I'm participating like into the, I don't know. It's just like I'm participating in this manipulation or this part of humanity. I'm like, it's not my favorite. It's
a gray area because they're pretty much playing a role, like a heightened version of themselves.
Yeah.
But then off camera, parasocially, they're being judged as that human. I mean, imagine if you were judged morally for things your characters did in scripted movies. It just doesn't happen. No one's like, oh, Zac Efron played Ted Bundy, he's a bad guy. It's like, it doesn't work that way.
No.
But
no,
with
and it's
reality
kind of
TV,
it's
it
totally
does.
the same thing. Yeah. But it's like, it knowing how things are done backstage to manipulate. And, there was this other big show that I had a friend work on, and she was like, you would have to use their mental illness against themselves. Like they would do really terrible, like, let me try to, if they had PTSD, they would dial something up to say this thing so it would trigger them. And so it was like, then they would create this narrative of the villain and so is going to come in and save them. Like, it's just so gross. So I think when it comes to that, I'm like, you have to know what you're signing up for, where I feel like the Kardashians know exactly what they're doing. They know they're participating in exactly what this is.
Yeah. They have producer edit. They've got control. With creative industry like this, you have to decide, am I the content? And is that content, if you're an actor, you can play different roles, you can keep moving on with your life. But if you're, the situation, that's it. You're the situation. Yeah. And they did okay. Like, they ended up negotiating good pay for that reality show because they were in such high demand. But with shows like The Bachelor, every year it's a new cast. So you ride this wave and then it's over like that. And then you're left sort of recoiling based on what the internet thinks of you. And what I've learned, because I cover this on my podcast, is I've learned how quickly producers can manipulate people to do things. And it's the same techniques of cults. It's mainly sleep deprivation. That's the biggest one. Then you mix in alcohol, you take away people's social media, their cell phones, their family, friends, and you really just fry the hell out of them. By day 3, they're done. They'll all right, whatever you want. They'll literally just lie on camera.
It's a mild form of torture. This is what they.
Yeah,
this is like NLP.
Yeah,
this is what they do in, like, the CIA torture chambers. Or what was it?
Yeah,
the waterboarding where they.
Yeah, no, but there's a few cast members from Love Is Blind that I've interviewed that are formed a foundation called You Can, and it's to try to unionize reality TV, to at least have a disclaimer at the start of episodes to say, like, these are real people, but they're in situations that are edited
Extreme.
Loosely and things like that. Yeah. But they haven't they haven't gotten that far, because they're not there's always going to be. If it wasn't for the unions, there would be someone who would do your job for half the price or for free. And, it's just, luckily with on camera and the Screen Actors Guild, you're at least protected by, base wages and basic rules and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you said, like, maybe you date these, I'm like, it's not my cup of tea for a myriad of reasons. Okay. So you also kind of do something really interesting that I was, when I was researching you, sort of like you were going on a drive and talking about your parents and talking, what was it? It was how to talk to your parents, in an effective way or something, like,
well, isn't that what we're all trying to do, is learn how to communicate with people?
So it was like driving in cars and with comedians, but talking about really deep shit.
I call it driving with Dave. And the reason I started doing interviews in cars is because when you have a guest in a car, you can kind of like look ahead and everything's moving, and it felt like just a real easy place to let your guard down. But it does seem like most of my conversations go towards, how are we handling our parents? How are we handling our siblings or our lover or our friends? And because if you haven't figured that out, it'd be very lonely on the road without having anyone along for the journey. Like nobody nobody likes that. We don't have enough time in the day to handle people that are toxic. And, I think good friendships, it's like good comedy. Like you give to your scene partner and then they give back to you and you make each other better.
Absolutely.
And then we've all got that friend that's a energy vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you finally realize the older you get, you're like, I don't have to hang out with these people, including your siblings or whoever. Like I can just choose to hang out with people that actually
fill up your cup,
fill up my cup and really ramp up my energy. And that's why we're best friends now.
So what has been the biggest illuminating thing for you in terms of, are your parents still alive?
My mom is, and my father's dead.
When did he die?
So my dad died about a decade ago, and I did not meet him till I was around 19 years old. My mom left him when she was pregnant with me. She was young 20s. I have an Irish twin, which means I have a sister that's less than a year apart. So my sister is only 11 and a half months older than me. And my mom was actually on a trip back home, and my family convinced her to not return to my toxic father. Well, and he was, God bless him, a Vietnam vet who struggled with PTSD. And on his death certificate actually had Agent Orange listed, which is a defoliant. So for those that don't know, Monsanto and other companies created defoliants, which were sprayed upon the forests of Vietnam and just destroyed the forest so that we could then find the enemy. But what we ended up doing is we drugged our own people.
Yeah.
So we destroyed our own people. And my father was one of them who, whatever neurotoxins that did to him, I mean, highly dangerous stuff. He lived his whole life with that. And he never really, from all I've gathered, he never really grew from that time as a young 19-year-old child when he was fighting in a senseless war. So it's a really sad story, but I was protected from it because I didn't learn of that story till I was actually his age, till I was 19.
Wow. So when you met him, what was that experience like, and how did you feel the need to forgive him? Did you guys have, did you bond in any ways? I had no bitterness because I had never met him. So my mom sat me down a year prior when I was like 18, and she said, you've got siblings that have been trying to contact me. So this is early 2000s, right? So Google's like new, and Facebook, I don't even think was out yet. So they found me through my aunt, who was an actress. They kind of found a web page and reached out. And my mom, this is the crazy thing. I don't think I ever once asked about my father. You just don't know what you don't know. And there's certain things you don't talk about in families. My whole adult life is to try to dance like my inner child wanted me to, play like an inner child, and talk like a person who's unfiltered. Because I was very filtered and lived a life where we always call it growing up Irish Catholic, you don't talk about things. And I know it well. I grew up the same.
Yeah. So I couldn't even and I'm even very careful how I talk to my mom about it, because now as a parent, I can think of the immense guilt my mom must have. So my sister, who's alive and well, has 4 kids of her own. She was the same age that my son is when my mom left my dad. And to think of leaving and losing the relationship that you would build after 6 months with the baby is heartbreaking. I look at my son, who is 6 months old. He's beautiful. He's so kind. I actually enjoy when he wakes me up at night because I get to see him. His cry is this little dinosaur, and he's at the age where he's leeching onto us and poking, and he's starting to say our name, Dada, Mama. It's just, and to think that my father, through his own inability to communicate, through his own jealousy and really having PTSD, through all of that, he pushed away my mom to the extent where he lost what could have been a decent relationship with his kids. It's very sad. I look at it from the outside and think how sad it is, but from my end, it just didn't exist. So I've been doing a lot more of the unpacking of it now that I have a kid, of how sad of a situation it actually was.
Wow. Yeah.
But I didn't answer your question. So when I met him, yeah, it was surreal as hell. He was my height, my eye color. He smoked, a couple packs of cigarettes a day. So you could see a guy, he's in the Midwest, who just was hardened by life. But you could just see, I could just see into those eyes. I could just see something that was closer to me than anything else I ever grew up with.
Wow.
And that was wild. It was just wild. It's just a sad story. But because of it, I've met multiple siblings that some are older, one's younger, and they've got
These
kids, and I'm an
siblings?
uncle. Yeah. So he had been married 5 different times. And his last wife was from Vietnam. And he brought her back here and because he would go to Vietnam every year to experience the culture there. It's like part of him was left there from being in the war and from being in such a senseless war. And my siblings that I've met, it's been nothing but all good, positive relationships. And it wasn't too late to meet them in my early 20s. And some of them came to my wedding, and they're just good people. And they all experienced a different version of my dad, all of which was a bad version. Some were raised by their grandparents, but we were the only one, my sister and I, where there was no contact, never met him.
Wow. And why do you think he couldn't stay in a committed relationship? Like, what was it about the PTSD? Because I've had PTSD. I've had pretty severe, off the charts. And that was like a compounding amount of trauma and that stems from my own parents and their trauma. So my dad was he was a child in World War II. So he was in a collective farm, but it was sort of like a form. How he described it was like a form of a concentration camp. So there would be he would see people murdered. He would see people raped, probably his mother, they would do whatever to her. And it was just they were starving, and it was they were put on cattle cars and, were forced to work on this farm by these, I guess, the Russians. And so my dad was American, but he was born in America, but his parents were East Prussian. But it's interesting because when, I've had so many things in my life where I'm where does this come from? My sort of thing has been worried that I would be homeless. I'm I'm going to be, and I'm always, I have my friend James, who I'm always constantly helping, who's, was on the streets, and now he's getting off the streets. But, I always see myself in my guy James, or I always want to help if I can. Anyway, so I guess what I realized recently was confronting that sort of feeling was really oh, this is what my dad felt. He was homeless. He was trying to fend for his life when he was a kid. And so these, the epigenetics of things, it's I don't know if you know about the study about rats with their offspring, that if they're shocked by, they see a cherry blossom and then they're shocked. So their offspring will see a cherry blossom and run the other way without even having any exposure whatsoever. So it's interesting where it's PTSD can take on lots of forms. So I think and then my mom had lost just about everyone in her family, just kind of young. And, she lost a husband. And it was she lost her father a month before her wedding. And then her husband died a few years later, just of a heart attack. Then her mother died a few years after that. And it was just everyone just died, just all the time. And so I think this two people who are traumatized met each other and then have a child. And then I'm sort of forced to.
Yeah, that becomes an actor.
It makes all the sense. And so, so I kind of had to unpack that. But then it also, their trauma had led me on, an adventure where I had to, I made I had to learn. So I don't actually think anything was bad, but it was sort of I think in my 20s, I made some bad decisions, and then that trauma becomes even more compounding. And then I had to, as we talked about, on your podcast, that, I just had to sit with myself and heal it all. But it's really interesting because, PTSD can have like certain triggers. So I'm curious of what was that like for him when he was, why he couldn't manage, I guess, like to stay in a relationship? What was that like? What happened? Was it just he was worried that people were going to kill him in the middle of the night, or?
I think I can speak to what my mom went through, and she felt that there was a lot of jealousy. She wasn't allowed to talk to men, and she would have to dress a certain way. And I think a lot of it is attachment issues, which is something I struggled with. And, the sad thing about PTSD, it's that like, this wasn't even a term that existed. They called it shell shock. And I think it was like, maybe making friends with someone and then they get blown up on a car in Vietnam, or every day they don't know if they're going to get attacked at night. So the trust issues that come from that. And again, it's different with everybody. I got in an accident where I was blindsided on the left side. And when I go into the intersection and make a left-hand turn, it's challenging to do. And it's just like a tiny example of like a very minimal PTSD where I realized I was injured in a way that my body like blacks out what to do in this moment. And it's gotten better over time. But I was, when I got in my accident, I thought, I'm not a big deal. I was like, I had a neck injury, but it wasn't that big of a deal. And then I was hugging a friend outside of the Hollywood Improv. I was literally seeing a friend, and someone had turned their Harley Davidson motorcycle on, and I jumped out of my, out of my socks. So it's like, we know like not to judge our soul based on what our body might do, the limbic system. Like we know that, but I think our parents' generation, they might have like my father, I'll never know because I never got to get that deep into the conversations, but he might have thought the inner child was responsible for that jealousy. And it's like, no, man, you fought in a war and you were messed up and you never got out of that town afterwards. And there was no term to help you. He ended up moving to Alaska because they didn't have a veterans hospital there, so he could get the insurance he needed, but in a better system. So like he was trying, you know what I mean? Like he had tried, he had moved all over the country probably to chase these demons. And some people get over it and have those moments of clarity where they overcome. He might've had that on his deathbed. That might've been the moment where throughout all, the actual really sad part about his story is he kind of talked about dying for so long that no one really believed it anymore. He was just so chronically ill and he was on oxygen and he had all these issues that when he was finally ready to go, like people knew. And he made so many amends with so many different people. But the irony of his death was that he had a military veteran that was with him, like an old platoon mate that was there at the hospital with him. And people were really happy for him that he had somebody that was taking care of him in his final days. Well, what we found out days later was that he was robbed blind by that man. And it's so sad begets sad. And the good that came from it is all of the children of this man are living like great lives where we're sharing so much love. And so when I do comedy, I might be making some stupid joke, but the purpose is like for people to just come together and kind of, there's a positivity angle to it all where we're just trying to do our best. So I look at my father as an example of a man who couldn't get out of the way of those demons. And then I look at my stepdad, the man that my mom ended up marrying when I was 11, as a guy who was very spiritual and religious and a self-creator and, like a very funny man. So I learned a lot by letting a different dad into my life. And I think the story for me has just been just taking the good and then taking the cautionary and understanding, like the saying I always say is that everybody's trying the best with their information they have. And the information my father had was a very painful life that he struggled from that point till his deathbed. And then even beyond when he was robbed after that.
Jesus. So did comedy was that something you always, were interested in, or did that just happen out of necessity? I always find that there's always like the peacekeeping. Every time I've asked like Dave Foley or I ask just, any other comedian, it's like Aaliyah, for instance, it was like a way to survive, a way to find, a point of levity and to try to, or it was a place of bonding, or how did that come about for you?
for sure the youngest sibling in a very quiet household of mom and sister did not get along. There's probably a lot of like depression happening there. It was very quiet, no TV, just creatively.
No
I had to
TV?
Yeah, it was very quiet. I had to like find, I had a lot of like conversations with my inner, like I had a very loud inner dialogue. So I always had the creative element in there, but I didn't know the path of what you could become. You would just, I would see like a Richard Pryor cassette and you'd be like, well, that's crazy. No one can become that. And then you'd see Chris Rock. No one can become that. It wasn't until I went to a open mic with very bad comedians that I was like, oh, you can do this. And it was before the comedy boom. This is like 13, 14 years ago. There wasn't really comedy or even videos on social media yet, really. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of it was something I stumbled into, but I got there by trying to do business, graduating college with a business degree, immediately realizing how soul sucking that was. I'm lucky the job sucked so much that from that second in Boston, 6 months after getting my first corporate job, I got fired. I immediately was like, this is my chance to get the hell out. I went on like Craigslist and started getting acting auditions. I only had like a business card. I had no headshot. And I was just like showing up to Emerson College auditions. And I got like the first 5 things I auditioned for on a very like low level student film thing. And then I went from acting to then improv comedy at Upright Citizens Brigade. And that was kind of like my foray into live acting.
That's
and
awesome.
Live play. And that's all it is like you're paying money to learn how to play with people on stage. And then from there, I started to meet some people that also did stand up. And then I tried my stand up for the first time and it was nonstop ever since. But it really took that sort of path of like fumbling around in the dark, trying to find the light switch into what creatively like turned me on. Acting has those moments where you have a good scene with someone, sure, but you've seen it. There's nothing better than going on stage. And you probably know this from from like playing tennis. It's like you are responsible for what you got to do.
Yep.
You're not on a team of 11 people playing soccer.
Yep.
You're like, this is me.
Yep.
I'm going to own it or bomb. And that it's so freeing. And so there was nothing like it. It was like the pure cocaine that I was searching for was stand up.
The immediate dopamine hit. How did you do your first time when you did open mic? Did you immediately crush?
Oh, no. I tried to fit about 15 minutes of material into 5 minutes. I did not leave room for the audience, which wasn't even there. There was no audience, but I did not leave room for them. And it's like a nervous energy, which I can still struggle with, to like, let it breathe, just relax. My first showcase, I did really well, but it was in a very warm audience. My now wife actually brought her boyfriend at the time to my show, sat front row. Cause we weren't even like, it was, it wasn't even,
friends.
It was years away from even dating her. And it was funny that she got to see that first like true set, which went really well. I went long, which you shouldn't do. I did like probably 8 minutes on a 5-minute spot. They're waving the light in the back, trying to get me off stage. I'm like, I've got my lines memorized and I don't know any other way to do it. Now it's like you do your set and like, it's like a constant jukebox where you're shuffling in and out of bits, depending on audience feedback. All right, got the light, better go into my last thing. And, you're kind of dancing more on like walking on coal, on fire coal. But early on, you're just like trying to get through it. So, it was, and then I thought, all right, I'll just replicate that. And then that's when the bombing starts. So you get that initial love. Hey, come into the old van. I'm going to feed you some candy. And then you bomb for however long you do. And then as soon as you think like, maybe this isn't it, then the heavens open up and you have a great set. And then what I've learned is the dopamine is so interesting to analyze because you don't, if you've never had a brownie before, you're not going to crave a brownie because you don't understand what's inside that brownie. The second you eat that brownie, you're like, dang, your brain's wired, you're spiking. And then the thought of a brownie will crave the dopamine until you've had too many of those brownies. You're like, I need something better. People get into this issue with sex addiction. They get into it with body dysmorphia, working out, or workaholics in all different ways.
Shopping.
So
drugs,
shopping,
alcohol. Yeah.
Everything. And what you learn is like the expectation of that reward is enough to drive you. And with comedy, That's why a lot of times if you tell the same joke over and over, it loses its luster. And then you don't feel excited saying it. So then you lose the energy involved in it. I'm sure you can relate acting. Sometimes you just run a scene too many times and it's like, all right, we got it. Like it's not fresh anymore. And then with stand up, you can at least write a new joke and then feel that process over and over. So you get this incredible high. Last night I came up with an idea and I was like, oh my God, I'm literally in my car. I like pulled over and wrote something down. And I was so excited to write about that because it's a new exciting thing versus like polishing up an old bit. There's no dopamine there. Yeah. So it's just a constant, it's like, I'm constantly searching like a sort of like an animal in the drought. I'm looking for that next watering hole. And that's the dopamine rush.
Yeah. I feel like I was literally just talking about this, that, to a friend, about the people that can go on stage every night and, like Eddie Redmayne. I mean, I saw Cabaret and it literally felt like this was a Grammy-winning VMA performance once, or an Eras tour. I'm amazed because it was so incredible and that Eddie Redmayne was flawless. Like I couldn't, and I'm like, this is on a Tuesday or a Wednesday and, I don't know, like, and he's doing this 6 days a week. And I wonder, when you've done something so many times, like how to keep it fresh. And I'm definitely like, it's a skill set that I think I would definitely get bored of, that I'm just like, oh my God, this is how do you, keep it interesting and keep it also the same, like, because you have to hit these beats and you have to like cry at this particular time and, have this sort of energy. So I know every time it's probably a different experience to go up on stage kind of like with the same bit. And yeah, I guess, I don't know. I'm fascinated by the thing that like, I can't, like, I don't know if I could do that. So I'm kind of with you. I'm very similar where I'm like, I want to have something new. Like it's the novelty of like, discovering something new. And, I feel the same.
I kind of look at it this way. And we actually talked about this on my podcast when you were talking about maybe doing a Christmas movie because, it could help finance something else. Sometimes you do a bit and it doesn't bring you any joy, but it gets the audience ready for the thing you're going to do. That's maybe your art house bit,
right?
that's more for you.
Your art house,
but that's what it is. Like for me with my podcast, I'm struggling on YouTube. Sometimes I'll make content that is not fulfilling to me, but it's paying the bills.
What is the unfulfilling content?
Well, so on YouTube, I make content in the Bachelor Nation world, and sometimes the stories
all the
just
stuff
suck.
that I was just talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes the stories suck, but it's like that channel bought me my home that allows me to do all the other creative stuff that I do. So it's like you trade sometimes. Like I would love my podcast. The audio version is entertainment news. I've shifted away from Bachelor Nation. YouTube makes it very hard to do that because they associate you with some of the keywords and some of the search engine optimization. So it's like a golden handcuff. It's almost like if it'd be like an actor that can't get out of soap operas. It's like, don't tell me soap operas are fulfilling. Like, sure, they're whatever they are, but like as soon as my channel started finding success, I never went on another commercial acting audition in my life. And I just started ghosting my commercial agents because I was like, oh, I didn't want to be in commercials. I wanted the paycheck from the commercials. Yeah. No one wants to hold up the thing and say, Listerine. It's just like, you want that fat money. The money's not fat anymore. Yeah. And so it's like, I'd rather be on YouTube in my shorts, barely. Are you in your shorts? I'm in my shorts right now. But it's like, but I also go crazy here because I had, and I love talking about this because I like to inspire people. I had during the pandemic, a little bit of success the second year of the pandemic. So at the end of 2020, after a full year of the pandemic, almost, I had a couple things take off on YouTube. And I think by the end of the year, I ended up making like $3,000. Well, within 2 months of that happening, the next year I was deep into well into the six figures. Wow. So I went from just knowing this could happen to let's make this a profession. Let's show up every day. Let's find the content. So sometimes the content is like, oh, so this couple was seen doing this, and it's like not that exciting. I'll still make it, but I'll try to make it exciting for me.
Yeah.
And maybe that's my like blue collar, low key Eddie Redmayne, where it's like, I've got to make this fun for me or else I'm going to go nuts.
Yeah.
But I also know that it's so lucrative that I'm going to do this until my other things kind of take, like, I would love it if I just made money doing stand-up at night. I would love that. But, you know, I'm in a sea of tens of thousands of comedians all trying to do it. So while we're clawing at that, I no longer have to do my minimum wage job I was doing. I can, you know, I can enjoy the prosperity of like, you know, stand-up adjacent content.
So, okay. So this is incredible. When did you start? And because, you know, I'm trying to, I mean, this is something that I'm definitely interested in is podcasting, talking to some of the most interesting people in the world and, you know, getting paid for that. Like that's the dream, you know, it's just have really fulfilling conversations. And, you know, I think like what I've noticed, I've done probably 20, this is my 21 episodes. And, you know, it's just been so illuminating for my life and it's made my life so much better. And I'm like, man, if I can figure out how to make money, how long did it take for you from starting the podcast to that first check of like $3,000 to, you know, 6 figures? How did that happen? And was that just, and how did you figure out that you wanted to talk about Bachelor Nation? Was your wife a fan?
No, she wasn't. This was pure me. This is me being a people pleaser. I've always loved celebrity news.
Right.
I would go before smartphones. I would be at the gym reading the
Perez
Wet
Hilton.
Us Weekly.
Yeah.
Someone just like sweat on the Us Weekly, and I'd be reading it next. Like I was the who wore it best guy. Which celebrities, they buy avocados too.
Did you go to Dumois? Because Dumois is sort of a guilty pleasure for me. Dumois or Crazy Days and Nights. That's where the real like Diddy stuff is. That's where
you get down.
That's like the conspiracy theories that like you found out and heard about like Epstein Island like years prior and all these like terrible, nefarious things that were happening. You're like, how is this possible? You know?
Yeah. And, you know, I don't know if it was a reprieve from my life to just like open up the magazine and see like, oh, let's look at the Helmsworth's abs. I don't know, but that's what it was. So YouTube used to be, I mean, it's evolved so much. It used to be you'd upload a video, you wouldn't worry about the thumbnail. They used to choose the thumbnail from the halfway mark of the video, and that would just be the thumbnail.
Right.
So like it was whatever it was. And so I used to throw up content and then, you know, whatever. But I started watching YouTube videos probably right before the pandemic of how people are making their money. And you'd see people making, you know, they'd be showing how they're making X amount. And actually the first person I ever did stand up with, her name's Rebecca Zamolo. We were in like a class together. She became super viral on YouTube, and she was very charitable to me. We did like some sketches together before she took off. Her husband was working in accounting. He quit his accounting job to help her with her YouTube. And at that point, and again, they lived in Brentwood in Los Angeles. At that point, I was like, dang, there's some money here. I broke it down. They've bought 50 homes. They run Airbnbs. They probably make about $15,000 a day. They're like, you know, she was an actress who was able to find YouTube and make that and like take control. So I knew that was a possibility. I was working, like I said, a few years before the pandemic, I was working a minimum wage job, and I would be watching Mr. Beast videos, watching how he, you know, formatted his thumbnails. And I'd watch all these other channels about YouTube growth. And I realized I didn't have the tools needed to sell people on watching my content. So that being, I actually had to teach myself Adobe Acrobat, which is like literal Chinese if you've never used it. It's very complicated till you know how to use it.
Right.
But I had to teach myself how to use Photoshop to make a banger thumbnail photo so people would click on my video. And then I had covered Bachelor for years, and I would just do an episode the morning after.
So you were a fan. So this didn't come out of this.
No. Yep. I had already decided about 2 years into dating my wife that I was going to cover. I was like, yeah, I'll cover Bachelor. I'll like talk trash and I'll cover the show. And that was the first time I actually was getting views from people that weren't in my social circle. So like, it used to be like, you'd be like, hey, everyone watch my channel. That's the worst way to do it. That's like, whenever I see comedians that are like begging their friends to watch their stand-up special, I'm like, your friends are not your fans.
Yeah.
They don't, because here's the deal. On YouTube, you learn that you will get promoted if the watch time is long enough and if the click-through rate is at a high enough percentage. So I need to get people to click on me, and then they need to hold their attention. So I started holding their attention by making longer form content, which we call mealtime length videos, 10, 15, 20-minute long videos. The old thought was make a 2-minute video, keep it short, keep it tight. That was the old like sketch comedy thought.
Right.
No, that's hogwash.
Yeah.
So
Joe Rogan
started,
has like 5-hour sometimes like podcasts. I mean, marathons. And here's the thing is you stop it.
And what Andrew Schultz, the comedian, learned was that people might not watch his 60-minute special, but they'll watch 2 hours of his stand-up, one clip at a time. So right in that sweet spot of like, all right, someone's going to go take their lunch. They're going to crack their laptop open. They don't want to scroll through TikTok. They want to put on a video and hear me rant about something. So I started doing that. What I learned in 2020 was that people were interested in what was happening between the episodes. So I actually have more success now talking about the lives of the contestants than I did covering what they did on the show. And once I started covering like breakups that happened and things like that, there was actually a restraining order scandal from one contestant where he put a tracking device under the hood or under the trunk of his ex-girlfriend's car.
Damn.
Reading that restraining order, what became my most viral video on that channel, and it really propelled me to daily content because I was advocating for her when he was literally doing these crazy things. He later, his name's Colton Underwood. He came out of the closet.
Oh
and had a
my
Netflix
God,
show.
Colton. Oh, yes. Everyone knows Colton. Yeah.
That's the story.
I was following him just because of the pandemic, because he like got COVID. He was like one of the first people with his girlfriend and the thing. And, you know, I
don't even know if he got COVID at this point because everything that happened was in pursuit of him living this lie, which is really sad. When you go back to saying, oh, everyone's trying the best with their information. Here was a college pro football player jock that was afraid to come out of the closet. Now, the only truth to that was that the collateral damage was Cassie Randolph because she had to deal with his torment. He created a fake phone number and fake stalked himself. It was batshit crazy. So no one was covering this.
What was the mechanism of him trying to control her? Why was he, what?
Yeah, it was a little Jussie Smollett-y because he wanted to like victimhood himself to like have a reason to talk to her still. Who knows? They settled it. She dropped her restraining order and she never talked about it again. She wanted nothing to do with him, but it's all in there. And like the text messages from the fake number, her brother was the one who found the tracking device. So either way, that just talking about the craziness of what happens, became very like the watch time and the retention was so high because it was so wild. So advice to anybody that's like making content, it's like, at that point I had learned how I wanted to do YouTube. And then I had a story that propelled kind of what I had learned and put me into the search bar. That was in the fall. I wasn't full time yet, but I remember one day, I was used to that point making like $1 or $2 a day. And it was like, oh, this is crazy. Like every month I'm going to get like a couple, like a lunch. And then I went to Malibu with my wife and we were just dating at the time. And that evening we were getting like dim sum. And I looked in my app and I made $80 that day. And I was like, oh shoot. Then the next day, $450. Oh shoot. And then I was like, it's on. And then that was in the fall of 2020. Come 2021, I just went immediately full-time. And at that point, the psychology was that people knew I was full-time. So they knew if they showed up to my channel, there would be content. And even like today, and even when I'm on vacation, I always have content. And that year, I think, the channel made like 180 grand and the next year, 230.
Oh my God. Way to go.
The YouTube I've pulled back from because it is that was like a full-time pandemic job and it was eating into a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. Now that I've started doing the podcast, that's allowed me to take the tools I learned in that niche and like broaden them to a more tolerable like audience.
Wow. That's incredible. Hold on. So I've just started a podcast. So I'm like, where do you get that money? How does that, so I know that there's like, you'll use whatever program it is and it'll, post for Spotify, it'll post for Apple, it'll post for YouTube. What is that?
Yeah. So
how do they notify you if you get money?
With YouTube, you have to get 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subscribers. So it's like an easy benchmark. It shows you on the app when you get there. And then, my first month of like real success on YouTube, when I went from $6,500 in the January of 2021. And I was like, cool, that's great. Let's do that every month.
Yeah.
And then the next month, 20,000. 3 weeks after, so on the 21st of every month, you get paid the previous month. And I'm just sitting there like at the bank or like just waiting, like refreshing my thing to see if Google's actually going to pay me. And sure enough, they just drop it in your bank account. So YouTube paid me 20 grand that month, 27 the next, and then it slowed down. That was when Chris Harrison got fired. So it was a big,
oh my God.
And then it kind of slowed down and now it's like so I was making all of my money on Google. Google owns YouTube. So they just direct deposit your payment. And of course, that's the more people that watch my channel, the more people are going to watch the ads. And that's just how it works out. Now with my podcast, I host on a company that's owned by SiriusXM. So I essentially get paid from SiriusXM. And it's the same deal. The more people I can get to listen to the podcast, the more ads are going to play. This week, great ads. It's going to be Black Friday. Like I will have an episode out on Thanksgiving. The ad rates will be so good.
Wow.
I will be there for people. You know what I mean? Like that's like, I've known to show up when it matters because the ad rates fluctuate depending on seasonal issues. The election was pretty big for ads, not as big as I thought it would be, but there was still like a lot of money being spent. Sometimes summers are quiet. January is like dead because everyone spends their money on the Christmas advertising and then it goes away. So so you just like learn what works. And I kind of knew through YouTube, all right, people like I get paid not for making sexy content. I get paid to go up there and talk and do my thing. So this whole idea of like making these beautiful vlogs that are edited fast, those take hours to make. I don't do that. I'm like, I grinded the rivets down on my plane. And I said, what's the least amount of post-production I can do to get my audience what they want, which is me talking about some stuff. And once I figured that out on YouTube, I went into the podcasting world and did the same thing. I make twice daily content. No one in their right mind does this. So I started making daily content, just a 25-minute episode. Hey, you're driving home from work. Here's your thoughts of the day. And that did well. And I was like, well, if I add a morning episode, wouldn't that double it? And it did. And I think it's just a good example of if people are listening, you don't have to be the Alex Cooper making $150 million. There's like a very blue collar way to be a content creator. And this is the problem that the music industry has. I was just talking about this. There's an artist who she said she makes more money from her OnlyFans than she does from touring. And I'm like, well, that makes sense because when you're touring as a musician, you're given a cut to Live Nation, your producers, your whoever built the album. Like you're making more money selling T-shirts than you are doing your craft. And OnlyFans or Patreon or any like straight to right to your fan like link, no one's getting a cut of that. So they're like my Patreon has 1,000 people that all donate every month to my channel. And I pay Patreon a percentage of that, but like they're there because I give them content. And it's like, I would have never had that. I mean, imagine I've had agents that work in film try to get a cut of what I'm doing online. And it's like, kick rocks. This is for me. I don't have any employees. This is for me.
Honestly, I feel like the agents, I mean, the really, really top agents, they will not help you until you're making millions yourself. And they have nothing to do with it. But they just want to get a cut of the money just to be like, yeah, you're rep like what, the top agency or whatever. And you're like,
do you think Dax Shepard's agent really thought it was a good idea for Dax? He was like Kristen Bell was the one making all the money. Dax Shepard just signed like a $60 million contract. He's making insane money. And his overhead is essentially nothing. His house, he writes off or whatever. Like my overhead, I got to look for, like, don't listen to I don't want the IRS. I got to like look for deductions. I'm like, I didn't even buy a camera this year. Like my overhead is like you met me when I went to New York. I can fly to New York and go to a stand-up show. I can get paid $40 It can cost me 900.
Yeah.
And I can take that loss because I can podcast on my bed, you know?
That's incredible. Yeah. Which is kind of, well, no, you podcasted from your home. So that was, I mean, that's where you are right now, right? You do it out of.
Yeah, but when I was in New York, I did several episodes. Like the night you saw me perform, I went back to my hotel room or the Airbnb I was staying at, and I did the next morning's episode. So I was like, it's hard work, but I'm like in the sandbox by myself doing my thing. I know the audience is there as long as I hit the publish button and try not to suck. Like I'm not giving bad content. I'm riffing. I'm sharing the daily news. I'm doing my thing. But you know, this is going to sound so spiteful, but it's not. I auditioned for AfterBuzz TV. I went to this audition several years late, 2018 or whatever, and it was run by Maria Menounos. It was her company, God bless her, and no one gets paid. You go to this company and you get to podcast there, and you get to cover different reality shows. And I went to this audition, and it was a sea of people. I mean, I was in the back. I couldn't even sit. There was like a sea of people all there for this audition, and I didn't, and I submitted a recap. They wanted you to do a recap of a TV show. So I loved the show Nashville. I was like, oh, I'll recap an episode of the Nashville. I go to send in my audition for that. And I had been doing doing Bachelor recaps, for several years. Then they told me I violated one of their prerequisites. So they wouldn't even be able to read the audition. They wouldn't be able to watch my audition video. And I was like,
what?
I was so white hot. I was so pissed off at the power that this gatekeeper had over me that they weren't even going to let me audition for a free gig at their place. Fuck this, right?
Yeah.
So that happened. Then about 2 weeks before the pandemic, I get an audition to go. It's literally to be an entertainment correspondent for, I believe it was E! News, and it was for their Snapchat show. But it was going to be a daily show. It was a daily show, and they had a teleprompter. And they said, we're going to have you come in, read notes off the teleprompter, then we're going to slow the prompter down, and I want you to riff jokes between what was written. I go in there, and it was my entourage moment. I'm not kidding. I had the teleprompter guy laughing out loud. I had jokes going on. I was saying the line, and I had things, and I was zinging, I was zanging. I walked out of the audition. It's never happened before. The casting lady was laughing with me as she walked me out. You know that thing where you're having, oh, see you next time, Dave, or whatever. And then all the people in the waiting room were looking at me like, what the fuck did you do in there?
Yeah.
Never heard back.
Yeah.
The world shuts down. And it was at that moment I go, I don't need AfterBuzz TV. I don't need E! News. I don't need Snapchat. I don't need any of this bullshit limitations I set for myself for my success. What happened after my first year of believing in myself? My channel ended up getting more views than every AfterBuzz TV recap show they had. I was getting more views than a team of 80 plus people.
Yeah.
And then that company ends up shutting down. And it was just a reminder. You don't need all of these gatekeepers. Just go out and do. And you know it too. If you want to fund something you believe in, go do it. This is the world where you get rewarded for taking that leap. Leap in the net will appear.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally feel that. I mean, that's kind of how I've lived my life, because it's, as much as, I mean, we talked about on your podcast where it's, you walk in and it just, the minute you're either right for the role or you're not, so it's sort of you're always sort of beholden to that system of, wanting to tell stories. And it's there's, when you're a writer, when you're a producer, you get to have more say and you get to create more and you get to, control your fate and your destiny to a certain degree. But I mean, yeah, with podcasting, it's very simple where it's you get to be a storyteller and you get to tell stories like you're telling your stories. This is just another avenue. It's another form of that. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely I think once a storyteller, always a storyteller. So it's whether it's comedy, acting, podcasting, it's kind of, all the same. Hold on. I want to go back to when you drive in cars with comedians and, just talk about how to speak to your parents better. I feel like I have these conversations all the time about, wanting to show up better in a way, because sometimes it's there's so much to unpack, because it's if you have boomer parents and they, both my parents are dead now, but, there was a point where you had to kind of accept them for exactly who they are and try not to change them or expect a different result. And that was probably my biggest lesson, was I'm never going to get like whatever these needs that weren't met in childhood, I can't expect that to ever change. And what's really interesting about that is the minute that I would just, my mom, I would be like talking to her and sometimes she wouldn't really listen, or sometimes she just, I'd have to repeat myself a lot. She wouldn't always be present. She's like, well, I was like, Mom, don't you ever listen? And she's like, well, you just get to explain it to me again. And I'm like, I don't like doing that though. I'm the other side of that. Like, great.
Dude, the whole generation of parents seem to have ADHD, and it's like growing up, not being able to have, it's probably where I get some of my anxiety from, because I know I can't finish a conversation. I was, last time I was home, I was like, someone in my family asked me, I was like by the sink, we're surrounded, there was like 10 people. And I was like, I'll tell the story, but if you guys stop listening at any point, I'm done. I'm not, because I was like, I got an audience of 80,000 people that are hearing this story right now. I don't need to tell it for you 10 people, right? If you don't want to hear it, because then my sister will come in. Why did you say like? And it's like, no, like the family, my family, like any large family, it's like you can't get a word in. So yeah, I'm that way. Where what I've learned is I've never really done therapy, but I listen to other podcasts where people say what they learned in therapy, and then I co-opt it.
So great. So you're actually that's actually how wisdom is supposed to work. You learn from other people, so you don't have to make the terrible decisions and learn it the hard way like I've done. Is like, I'm stubborn. So I'll hear a really great advice and I'm like, nah, I'm going to do it this way. And I'm like,
the video game will keep playing you on that level till you take the advice. But there's a comedian, great guy, Bobby Kelly, and all the New York comedians all go to the same therapist, and he was telling his therapist like of his like dad issues. He grew up with like several different stepdads and they're abusive, and the comedian and the therapist told him, you don't get to have a dad, you only get to be a dad. Mm-hmm. And so I take that advice and I go, I didn't get the dad, I got a great stepdad, but I didn't get the dad experience. I get to give that to my son. Yeah. And you talked about this on my show about the alchemy of a bad situation and turning that positivity. Yep. I get the energy of knowing how valuable that time is, and I get to apply that to my son. Yeah. Maybe he'll appreciate it, maybe he won't, but that's my gift I get to give him, is from my lack. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, whatever the lessons that, our parents did, and we think to ourselves, well, like, I'm not going to do, like, it's sort of like when I think of Eminem, like Marshall Mathers, I feel like it was his mission in life to be a great dad, because he didn't get that, and so he felt like he didn't know. I never knew my father. So he obviously, I think he didn't know his dad or whatever. It was a really messed up relationship. And then with his mom, obviously she was trying to probably do the best she could. And it was a very toxic relationship. And if you've listened to Eminem's songs, so I think like that he stopped touring specifically just because, he wanted to, like, he literally 50 Cent, he was like, yo man, like we got to go on tour, we got to do this, and he's like, no, I can't, like I gotta raise my daughter. So that was sort of, I think the things in life that we can look at it and we can either choose like, the same path that has been built for us. Like I've been kind of thinking about this concept of fate, is that these patterns have been running our lives. You don't know what you don't know. So for instance, it's like whatever these generational trauma or generational patterns, are probably similar for both parents. And that's why there's some sort of synergy and there's some like values that are similar. So then there's something that attracted them together. And then, you are sort of working off these patterns that are pulling the strings and are moving you in certain directions. And then, or for like, if there's a lack, if your needs haven't been met, then you go, this other way. And so it's this interesting concept. I was listening to Theo Vaughn and Abromeit, and it was really interesting. I had this huge pop
just kind of discovery about, oh my God, all these things that, in my 20s, and, I was in like the wrong relationship, and I was trying to unpack how that all happened, and all these, other relationships that I had. And sort of the takeaway for that was, well, I had these unconscious things running the script for me, and it led me down this path. And then I was always the idea was I was always going to choose this. I was always going to be in this relationship or the same version of that until I had awareness, until I moved up in, a level of consciousness. So yeah. And then the more you're aware, the more you can be like, oh my God, there's so much more life. There's so much more world. I didn't have to, it's sort of like these very narrow paths that are laid before you. And so I found that to be really interesting, that it's like, the more awareness, then we can, choose the most grandest things in life. But like, we don't know, we have just these unconscious things sort of just guiding our path. Do you believe in that?
So many people, like I'm from my hometown in Newport, Rhode Island is on an island, and you got to go over a bridge. That bridge is physical. It's costs you $1. It's 88 cents on the toll. Unless it's like psychologically, that bridge is stopping you from expanding. You're on that island until you decide you're not.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't leave. And a lot of people don't leave the island. And some people don't want to. And some people have like sort of simple sort of needs in life, and they just want to be in that community. And I was never that way. But I think of our generation, like old millennials, we're the first where we got a dose of life before social media. We got a dose of like post-pandemic, post 9/11, bubble crashing, housing market bullshit. I mean, we have multiple recessions, and then like you realize like what's the American dream anymore, right? And I think our generation, we're like trying to use the tools that exist now to expand to as many new opportunities as possible. Like we get the chance to have these conversations you and I would never have if it wasn't for podcasting, and then an audience can pluck whatever they want to glean from it. So I think we're lucky to be alive in the time that we are. And I also think like you and I are lucky that we didn't grow up with the social media, because we were able to have a little normalcy. Yeah. So we almost got like that good aspect from our parents. But like my parents, they don't even know they still don't know what I do. You know what I mean? Like they have no clue.
They're boomers.
And my mom's like spiritual, and my stepdad owns his own company. So they are kind of entrepreneurial, but like my wife's parents, they're like, if you go and get a job from somebody else, like that's what you do.
Yeah.
And now it's like, even if you're working we're just freelancers at the end of the day. You can sign a contract and make a few movies, but you're only like, we're all like our own company. And that's going to be like blown. I mean, for anybody who's wondering, I preach this all the time on my show. You have to find a way to build your newsletter, your email group, your Instagram, your TikTok, your podcast, everything you're doing right now. One good TikTok, one good Instagram viral video.
Matt Rife.
You're done.
Matt Rife.
Buy a hoe.
Matt fucking Rife is the perfect example of that. Shout out to Matt Rife, and just having that one TikTok just blow the fuck up. And he is selling out arenas. He made $50 million like within a year. It is crazy. This guy just
he had put the work in, whether people like him or not.
He did.
He had put the work in.
He put his 10,000 hours in.
The old school version of him is Dane Cook, who was selling out everything. His brother-in-law steals from him.
Oh my God, it's so crazy.
He's essentially broke. So, but he's able to take what he has in his brain, how to perform, and he's able to go use that name recognition. If TikTok died tomorrow, you would know Dane Cook and Matt Rife's name. So like
100%.
Getting the ultimate goal to achieve what you want in life.
Is his brother in jail, by the way?
He was. I don't know if he still is. It's been a while. But yeah, the ultimate goal is to get that equity where like your name can transcend whatever like the app is. Because then like when I started my podcast, I had the YouTube audience, enough of them come over that it was starting to get me immediate success. But it was immediate success because of the years of kind of it not being immediate. Where someone like you've already got the professional sort of framework for how to find success. So as you're doing this podcast, you're doing it at a level that's super high quality. And so like you'll receive success way quicker than someone who's just like dinking around. But also You
you
if
never
you're gonna
know.
get paid,
I mean, you never know how it all happens for people.
Yeah, and some people like the Hawk Tua girl, Haley Welch.
Hawk
she got
Tua,
success.
that girl. By the way, I absolutely, I think the reason why she catapulted as far as she did is because she's so damn likable. She's so authentic. She's so fully herself. And I think
Simple life.
I think that's why people love podcasts, because it's just, the Gen Zers, it's completely authentic. It's long form. It's, there's
Susie,
nothing.
She's a terrible podcaster.
Is she?
Now,
Is she really? Wait, she is? Yeah.
Terrible. She's had episodes.
I love her as a guest. She was on Whitney Cummings, and I thought she was hilarious and so likable. I thought she was great.
She can't drive
You're
the
allowed
show.
to talk. You can totally chime in. He's just sitting there nodding. I'm like, no, you could chime in. I like the chimes. Chime in.
But like, who blames her? You know what I mean? Like, that's just she jumped on an opportunity. She shouldn't have done anything else. She's doing the right thing. She's getting equity and building that. But it'll have some learning curve.
She took that 15 minutes and ran with it. Like, no, I mean, I would love to have her as a guest, because I think she's really funny and I think she's really likable, and I just think she has no fucks given. And I think people are tired. And like, the reason why politics, I think, I'm not a political person, but if you look at, like, I like to study sort of humanity, and I like to study, like, why we're here. And I really believe that, in terms of politics, of people are so done with, I think, the polished politicians, and I think that's all it is they want to know who the person really is, instead of like, oh yes, like, I mean, Obama was an incredible speaker, and like, that's what we expect for somebody running the country. However, I think people went a little crazy and heard all the, the QAnon shit that was going down. And then, like, some of it was real, and, the Epstein Island thing. And then everyone's like, it's like, oh, Bill Clinton went on, his plane 26 times. And, Bill Gates was like a friend of his. And, this whole, like, basically the crumbling of like, oh, I wear a sweater and I care about the world. But guess what? We're going to Epstein Island and we're doing some fucked up shit. And now he, has a divorce. And she literally said that was the most evil man possible. So I think people are fed up with the bullshit of being this buttoned up guy and being like, we care. Meanwhile, we're doing the most nefarious, terrible things at P. Diddy's house. And I'm just saying, we're fed up, so we want to know what we're looking at is true. So it's like, whether you like it or not, it's like fully like, I am who I am. And so I think that's why the Gen Zers, and I think that's why they only listen to podcasts now, is because they want to know what they're looking at, and they want to know, is this authentic? And that's why they like crazy wild shit, like Andrew Schultz, for instance. He said, crazy wild shit, and you know what you're getting. Like Joe Rogan is just fully, I think, why those podcasts are so successful. Theo Vaughn, he's so authentic. So I think
it's gonna pose a problem, because podcasting's great, but it's not controversial. And most people don't go on a podcast. It's like you bring someone into your living room. You're not getting the tough questions. So there were like, both campaigns did things
Caller
good
Daddy,
and bad.
Caller Daddy and Joe Rogan. Sure.
Yeah, Trump was great. It was good that they went on Caller Daddy and
Andrew
Joe
Schultz
Rogan.
and Theo Vaughn.
But none of those conversations led to like, well, what do you really, why did you do this then? And the mainstream media needs to exist to an extent, or maybe not mainstream, but media needs to exist so that can be called out. Like, you can't just run a campaign on podcasts, but what they showed was getting to know somebody is a big thing.
Is a huge thing. Yeah,
I think people would rather vote for someone that they know is a fake populist versus someone, it was an election of change, or at least perceived change.
Yeah.
Which, I am pretty, I've actually probably lost to probably 10% of my audience because of my politics, but I actually appreciate people that don't like my politics that still listen to my channel. And for the rest, it's like, look, you can go live in your echo chamber, but I give the news and I give you my opinions on it. And I've said all along, like from the beginning of the pandemic, the fact we were never talking about what we could do to improve our health. My mom lost over 125 pounds during the pandemic.
Wow.
And I was saying, if we could have only had like some sort of national conversation about the food and how
we are now. We're having a national conversation about it now at both parties. Huh? Yes. So I mean, whatever,
Which
politically.
I think is
I'm
so
not political,
misguided.
but I will say that like everyone is coming
so
together. Democrat, Republican, independents, everyone's going to Washington, D.C. and being like, we're being poisoned. Why the fuck does Europe have only 600? So it's apparently 600 ingredients that they use. We use about 10,000. Like, I mean, 10,000 of, the red dye and GMOs. And to your point, the Vietnam, I watched this documentary that the same terrible chemicals that were killing people in Vietnam, we then took those chemicals and put them on plants that we consume and we eat. No wonder we have the problems that we have. But
if we,
oh my God.
Yeah. And it might, and those might not be the biggest things, but like you can't buy a Fireball shot in Canada with the same ingredients that it has here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
So it's like, it's ever. So anyway, so Susie and I will be running for office.
No, I won't. I definitely will not.
I'll be the border czar. You can be in charge of the real stuff.
No, I mean, you know what? I like, basically, it's like the movie network. It's like, we're mad as hell. We're not going to take it anymore. I appreciate that about the food. I'm so not political. I'm kind of like,
and food shouldn't be. Yeah, food doesn't have to be political.
Food. We can. Why the hell are we like consuming plastics? And it's like just basically our reproductive systems have suffered because of all the plastics that we're consuming, and it's just terrible. And everyone's infertile, and it's a bad deal. We have to wrap this up. I would love to solve the world's problems, Dave. Honestly, I really would. Honestly, though, you were such a shining star, seeing just your comedy. You were so present. You were so there. You were so polished. I was on the edge of my seat, watching your comedy. Wow. You were fantastic. You're such a star. Everyone should know that. That's why your podcast is doing so well.
That means a lot. Thank you. That's all I really care about. The podcast and YouTube. It's those affirmations don't hit me, but a good stand up speaks to what you're trying to do. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, you crushed it. It was awesome, and it was like on a Tuesday. It was like a Tuesday night, and it was like 10:30. We started late.
I knew I had a hunch I wanted to go because I was supposed to fly that day, but in a different direction, and I flew to New York and just was like. I was like, I'm like, take the pressure away because I'm only here for a night. It's just fun. I'm gonna have some pizza and do this.
Yeah.
But it was just like, that was kind of like one of those, that was for me, that was like, just like for me to have some time because, now I've got a kid, I got a wife, you become, it's more selfless, but that was kind of like a little bit of a selfish thing to go take that gig. But what it led to us meeting and
yes,
multiple podcasts under the belt now.
Let's go. I would love to have you on again. Dave, you are fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
A whole nother level.